The storm had come without warning. Ethan Cross pulled his cloak tighter as the sharp winds roared across the barren land. The planet was strange to him, filled with towering cliffs of glass-like stone and endless plains of silver sand. He had been sent here on a survey mission to collect samples and map the terrain for future expeditions. The human fleet above waited for his reports, expecting nothing unusual from this quiet, unclaimed world. But now lightning split the dark sky, and the ground shook as if the storm had a mind of its own. Ethan's small scanner beeped in alarm, showing unstable energy patterns. He was about to retreat to his shelter when he heard something, a faint cry carried by the wind. At first he thought it was a trick of the storm. No one should be here. The planet was uninhabited, or so the fleet believed. But the sound came again, weaker this time, a desperate wail that stirred something deep inside him. Ethan hesitated only a moment. Then he moved toward the sound. The storm battered him, pushing against his every step. Sand whipped across his visor, stinging his skin. He climbed over jagged rocks, following the faint cries until he reached the base of a collapsed ridge. There, half buried under shattered stone and twisted metal, lay a small figure. It was not human. The child's skin shimmered faintly, glowing blue under the flashes of lightning. Its body was slender, fragile, and its large eyes blinked with fear. A broken transport vessel lay nearby, clearly wrecked by the storm. The child was trapped beneath a heavy shard of metal, too weak to move. Ethan's training told him to leave. His orders were clear: avoid first contact, do not interfere. But his heart overruled his orders. The cries of the child tore at him. He could not walk away. Dropping his pack, Ethan rushed forward. He tried to lift the shard, but it was too heavy. He braced his legs, gritted his teeth, and pushed with all his strength. The shard shifted just enough for the child to wriggle free. Ethan pulled the small body into his arms, shielding it as the storm howled louder. The child clung to him weakly, its glowing eyes filled with both fear and trust. "It's all right," Ethan whispered, though he knew the child could not understand his language. "You're safe now. I've got you." He looked around, searching for shelter. The wreck offered no protection, and the storm grew worse. In the distance, he spotted the dark mouth of a cave. Carrying the child, he ran, stumbling through the gale until he reached the cave's safety. Inside, the air was cooler and still. Ethan laid the child on a flat stone and checked for injuries. The small alien had cuts across its arms and a bruise on its forehead, but nothing fatal. Ethan used his medical kit to clean the wounds, speaking softly to calm the little one. The child studied him with wide eyes, trembling but curious. When Ethan offered water, the child drank slowly, its glowing skin flickering like dim light. As the storm raged outside, Ethan sat by the child, wondering who it was. If there was one, then there were more. This planet was not empty. Humanity's maps were wrong. He realized he had stepped into something far larger than a simple survey mission. Hours passed before the storm faded. Ethan was exhausted, but he could not rest. He needed to find the child's people. Leaving the cave, he carried the small figure in his arms and looked out over the silver plains. The storm had cleared, revealing a strange beauty. The sky shimmered with colors like liquid crystal, and in the distance, lights glowed faintly. A settlement. Ethan set off toward the lights. Each step was heavy, but he did not slow. The child clung to his neck, too weak to walk on its own. He whispered encouragement, though he knew the alien words would not reach the child's mind. What mattered was the tone, the promise of safety. By the time he reached the edge of the settlement, the night sky had turned dark violet. Towers of crystal rose high above him, glowing softly as if alive. Strange beings moved through the streets, their skin glowing in different hues, their eyes sharp and intelligent. The moment they saw Ethan carrying the child, everything changed. The glowing figures surrounded him at once, their voices raised in alarm. Some pointed at him, others at the child. He set the small figure gently down and raised his hands, trying to show he meant no harm. The child reached out weakly toward the crowd, and a cry went up among the beings. In an instant, they rushed forward, lifting the child carefully and carrying it away. But their eyes never left Ethan. A group of guards appeared, tall and armored, their weapons gleaming with energy. They circled him, speaking in a language he did not understand. Ethan did not resist when they bound his hands. He expected anger, maybe even death. He had interfered, after all. But instead they led him through the glowing city toward a massive palace that shimmered like carved starlight. Inside, the atmosphere grew tense. Hundreds of alien eyes watched as he was brought into a great hall. At the far end, seated upon a throne of crystal, was a woman unlike any he had ever seen. She was tall and regal, her skin glowing brighter than all the others. Her presence was commanding, her gaze sharp yet calm. Ethan realized immediately, this was the queen. The guards knelt, presenting the rescued child. A wave of emotion crossed the queen's face as she rose from her throne and embraced the small figure. She held the child close, her composure breaking for just a moment. When she looked up at Ethan, her eyes burned with both gratitude and suspicion. The hall fell silent as she spoke, her voice ringing like music, though he did not understand the words. Still, the meaning was clear. She was asking who he was, why he was here, and why he had touched what was most precious to her. Ethan stood tall, though fear pressed against his chest. He could not explain everything, not in her tongue, so instead he placed his hand over his heart, then gestured toward the child, mimicking the act of lifting the wreckage. He lowered his head slightly, showing respect. The queen studied him for a long time. Then she turned to her people and spoke again. The hall stirred with whispers, some angry, some awed. Finally, she looked back at Ethan and made a single declaration. The guards released their hold, but they did not let him go free. Instead, they moved closer, forming a protective circle around him. The queen's words were translated to him by a device one of the advisors carried. "You saved the heir to my throne," the advisor said in a steady voice. "For that you are honored, but you are also bound. You will not leave until the queen understands who you are and why you risked everything for a child not of your own kind." Ethan's breath caught. He had not expected this. He had thought he would save the child, hand it back, and quietly leave. But now the queen's eyes locked onto him, sharp and unwavering. In that gaze, he saw both gratitude and something deeper, a question about humanity itself. And in that moment, Ethan realized his journey had only just begun. Ethan Cross had never felt so out of place in his life. The crystalline palace of the Veyari stretched high above him, glowing softly in the violet night. Every surface shimmered with light as if the very walls were alive. The hall was vast, filled with alien nobles and guards, their eyes fixed on him with suspicion and curiosity. He stood at the center of it all, surrounded by beings who had never seen a human before. The queen had spoken, and her command had been clear. He would not leave until she understood him. Her people obeyed at once. Ethan was not treated as a prisoner in chains, but neither was he free. Guards followed him wherever he went, always watching, their glowing armor reflecting the light of the palace walls. That night, he was taken to a chamber deep within the palace. The room was strange but not unkind. The bed was soft, woven from threads of crystal fibers that glowed faintly when touched. Food was brought to him, fruits that sparkled like gems and liquids that shimmered with colors. Ethan tasted carefully, fearing poison, but the flavors were surprisingly gentle, sweet, refreshing, unlike anything on earth. His hunger overcame his doubts. As he ate, his thoughts turned back to the child he had rescued. He wondered if it was safe now, surrounded by its people. He wondered if it remembered him. He did not know that the child was the heir to the throne, though the queen's reaction had given him a hint. Whatever the truth, he knew his life had changed the moment he chose to save it. The next morning, Ethan was summoned to the royal court. He was escorted by 2 guards into a chamber far grander than before. Crystal pillars lined the hall, glowing with soft blue light. At the far end, the queen sat upon her throne, her presence commanding and serene. Around her stood advisors, nobles, and warriors, their faces unreadable. The child was there too, sitting close to the throne, wrapped in soft garments that shimmered like water. The little one looked stronger than before, though still fragile. When its eyes met Ethan's, a spark of recognition lit up its face. It reached out with a small hand. The hall murmured with surprise. The queen raised her hand and silence fell. She spoke, her words like music carried through a translator device. "You are human," the advisor said in her stead, his voice even. "You come from the stars, and yet you saved what is most precious to us." "Why?" Ethan stepped forward, though his heart pounded. He did not have the words to explain everything, but he spoke simply, clearly. "Because the child needed me," he said. "Because it was the right thing to do." The translator repeated his words in the Veyari tongue. A ripple of whispers passed through the court. Some looked doubtful, others curious. One tall noble stepped forward, his glowing skin flickering angrily. "A lie," he declared in their language, his tone sharp. "No outsider risks himself for another's child without reason. He seeks gain or he hides a darker purpose." The queen did not answer at once. Her eyes never left Ethan. "Do you seek reward?" the advisor asked for her. Ethan shook his head. "No, I want nothing. I only want to return to my people when the time comes." The hall erupted again with voices, some outraged, some intrigued. To many, his words were hard to believe. Why would a stranger from the stars risk his life without hope of gain? But the child's soft voice cut through the noise. The little heir spoke in a language Ethan could not understand, yet the meaning was clear. It pointed at him, then placed its small hand over its heart, copying the gesture Ethan had made in the throne room. The queen's eyes softened slightly. She looked from her child to the human, then raised her hand again. Silence fell instantly. "You will remain here," the advisor translated her decree. "You will learn our ways and we will learn yours. Until then, your fate is bound to us." In the days that followed, Ethan became a strange figure in the palace. Servants watched him with wide eyes as he walked the glowing halls. Nobles whispered behind his back, some calling him a savior, others a threat. The guards never left his side, though their stance grew less hostile with time. He spent many hours in the great library of the palace, where crystal tablets floated in the air, filled with glowing symbols. Scholars tried to communicate with him, teaching him simple words of their language. Ethan struggled, but he was patient. Each day he learned more, slowly building a bridge between his world and theirs. The queen herself often observed him from a distance. She asked him questions through her advisors, about Earth, about humanity, about the fleet that traveled among the stars. Ethan answered honestly, though carefully. He did not reveal military secrets, but he spoke of human culture, of families, of children, of the way people cared for one another. The queen listened in silence. Her eyes betrayed no emotion, but Ethan felt she was weighing every word, searching for truth. One evening he was invited to dine in the royal hall. The long table glittered with crystal dishes, each filled with luminous food. The nobles stared at him as though he were a rare creature on display. But the child sat beside him, smiling, offering him fruits and laughing softly when he made clumsy attempts to speak in their tongue. The queen watched this carefully. She said little, but Ethan noticed her expression soften whenever the child laughed. Not everyone was pleased with Ethan's presence. One of the queen's advisors, a stern figure named Varen, openly distrusted him. Varen often warned the queen that the human was dangerous, that he was a spy sent by the stars to weaken their people. He argued that Ethan should be locked away or sent to the mines far from the air. Others, however, began to see value in him. A group of young warriors admired his courage, eager to hear his stories of Earth. The scholars were fascinated by his knowledge, especially his ideas about machines and exploration. Slowly, opinions began to divide, some against him, some in support. Through it all, Ethan remained humble. He did not boast, nor did he beg. He simply tried to prove with his actions that he meant no harm. One night, as he stood on the balcony overlooking the glowing city, the queen herself approached. She dismissed the guards with a wave of her hand, leaving them alone under the star-filled sky. For a long time, she said nothing. Ethan waited, feeling the weight of her gaze. Finally, she spoke through the translator device she carried herself. "You saved my child. Twice now the court has seen it. You risked your life with no promise of gain. Why?" Ethan looked out at the stars. "Because a child's life matters," he said simply. "No matter the world, no matter the people." The queen studied him, her expression unreadable. Then she turned her gaze to the city below. "My people do not understand you," she said. "Some fear you. Some wish to use you. I cannot yet decide what I see in you." Ethan met her eyes. "Then let me show you. Let me earn your trust, not with words, but with actions." For the first time, a faint smile touched her lips. It was brief, gone in a heartbeat, but it was there. "You are bold, human," she said. "Perhaps too bold. But we shall see." She turned and left, her glowing figure vanishing into the shadows of the palace. Ethan stood alone on the balcony, staring at the stars. His fleet was somewhere out there searching for him. But here, in this alien court, a different fate was unfolding. He did not know where it would lead. only that his choice to save a child had bound him to this people in ways he could not yet understand. And in the silence of the night, he realized something unexpected. He did not feel like a prisoner anymore. He felt like a part of something greater. Days passed into weeks, and Ethan Cross slowly became a familiar figure in the crystal city of the Veyari. Though he was still watched closely, the open suspicion began to soften. Some of the nobles greeted him politely. The scholars often invited him to the libraries, and the young heir, whom Ethan now knew as Kale, followed him everywhere with curious eyes. The queen remained cautious. She asked questions often, wanting to learn more about humans and their ways. Ethan explained what he could in simple words and gestures, while carefully avoiding details about the fleet that orbited above. Life among the Veyari seemed almost peaceful. But peace is often fragile. It began with whispers in the palace corridors. Guards murmured about strange sightings near the borders of their land. Unfamiliar ships moving in the skies, signals picked up by their watchtowers. Ethan noticed the tension in their movements, the way the queen's advisors met in hushed voices late into the night. One evening, Veyron, the stern advisor who distrusted Ethan most, spoke loudly in the council hall. Ethan, though seated apart, heard every word. "The Drakthar grow bold," Veyron declared. His skin glowed a harsh red as he spoke. "They know the air is young. They know our defenses are weakened from the storms. If they strike now, they will not stop until the throne falls." The hall buzzed with unease. The queen raised her hand, silencing the voices. Her calm expression did not hide the shadow in her eyes. Ethan leaned forward. He had never heard the name Drakthar before, but he could feel its weight in the room. He asked quietly to a guard nearby, and the guard answered in broken words of the human tongue. "Enemies. Old enemies. They want power. They want the queen's child." The meaning was clear. That night, Ethan could not sleep. He walked the balcony outside his chamber, looking out at the glowing city. His mind turned to Kale. The child was innocent, unaware of the dangers closing in. If what he heard was true, the Drakthar would target Kale first, for the heir represented the future of the throne. Ethan clenched his fists. He had saved Kale once, by chance. Could he do it again if war came? The next day he asked the queen for an audience. To his surprise, she agreed. Standing before her throne, he spoke plainly. "Your Majesty, I have seen fear in your people. I have heard of the Drakthar. If they come, you will need more than walls of crystal to protect your heir." The queen's gaze was steady. "You speak boldly for one who is not of my people," she said. "I speak as one who has seen war," Ethan replied. "My world has fought battles. I know how enemies think. If you let me, I can help prepare your defenses," the hall murmured. Some scoffed at his words, especially Veyron, who stepped forward with disdain. "This human dares to tell us how to fight?" Veyron snapped. "He is no soldier of the Veyari. He is nothing but an accident who stumbled upon our heir." But the queen lifted her hand. "Enough," she said. She looked at Ethan with searching eyes. Perhaps the stars sent him for a reason. Perhaps not. Yet his words carry weight. She leaned forward slightly. "Very well, human. Show me how you would prepare my people." From that day, Ethan was given cautious permission to advise. He began walking the walls with the guards, studying their weapons and defenses. The Veyari relied on energy towers that glowed with protective light. But many of these towers had grown weak, neglected after years of peace. Ethan suggested repairs and showed them how to reinforce their structures with simple techniques he had learned on Earth, using leverage, bracing and layered shields instead of only raw energy. At first, the guards looked doubtful, but when his method strengthened a collapsing tower, they began to listen more. Soon warriors gathered around him, curious about his knowledge. Ethan demonstrated strategies of positioning, ambush, and deception, lessons learned from human history. "Strength is not only power," he explained, drawing shapes in the sand for the soldiers. "It is how you use what you have. Even a small force can defeat a larger one if it fights smart." The soldiers nodded, impressed by his simple but effective ideas. Word of his teachings spread quickly. Kale often joined these lessons, sitting beside Ethan, eyes wide with admiration. The child copied his drawings in the sand, laughing when his lines grew crooked. Ethan smiled, feeling a strange warmth. He had never thought of himself as a teacher, but here he was, shaping the future of a people not his own. The queen observed from a distance more often now. Though she said little, Her eyes followed Ethan as he worked. Sometimes he caught her watching, and in those moments he felt both respected and measured, as though she were trying to see the truth of his heart. But not all eyes looked kindly upon him. Varen's glare grew darker with each passing day. The advisor warned the queen constantly that the human was gaining too much influence, that his presence was dangerous. Yet despite Varen's protests, the queen allowed Ethan to continue. She saw her soldiers growing stronger, her defenses improving, and though she would not admit it aloud, she trusted him more than she had before. Then the warning came. One night the watchtowers lit up with alarms. Strange ships appeared in the skies, dark, sharp, and menacing. The Drakthar had arrived. Panic spread through the city. Citizens rushed to shelter and guards filled the walls. The queen called an emergency council and Ethan was brought before her once again. "The Drakthar will test us," she said, her voice calm but firm. "They come to see our strength. If we falter, they will strike harder." Ethan stepped forward. "Then do not show weakness. Use the defenses we have strengthened. Let me lead the warriors to hold the gates." The hall erupted with protests. "He is not one of us," cried Veyran. "How can we place our lives in the hands of a stranger?" But Kale suddenly stood, small yet unshaken. The child looked at the queen, then at Ethan, and spoke with clear, innocent words. Though Ethan could not understand, the meaning carried through the hall. The air was declaring trust in him. The queen looked down at her child, then at Ethan. Her decision was swift. "The human will stand with us," she declared. That night, Ethan prepared with the soldiers at the city's outer gate. The glowing towers hummed with energy, ready to unleash beams of light, but the soldiers were nervous. This was the first real threat they had faced in years. Ethan walked among them, speaking in simple words, using gestures where his language failed. "Stand strong. Watch each other's backs. Remember, the Drakthar expect fear. Show them courage instead." The soldiers nodded, their eyes burning brighter. When the enemy ships landed beyond the walls, the ground shook. From the dark crafts poured the Drakthar, tall, armored beings with jagged forms and eyes like burning coal. Their weapons glowed with harsh red light. The Veyari warriors trembled, but Ethan stepped forward, his voice strong. "Hold the line!" The battle began. Energy blasts lit the night as the Drakthar charged. The Veyari towers fired beams of crystal light, striking the attackers and forcing them back. Soldiers held their ground, using Ethan's tactics to form strong positions. Instead of scattering, they fought as one, covering each other, striking where the enemy was weakest. Ethan fought beside them with a borrowed blade, his movements swift and precise. He was no alien warrior, but he fought with the determination of a man who refused to see innocents fall. To the Drakthar's surprise, the defenders did not break. After hours of fighting, the invaders pulled back, their ships retreating into the night sky. The gate held. Cheers erupted across the walls. The Veyari shouted Ethan's name, their voices echoing like thunder. For the first time, they saw him not as a stranger but as an ally. When the dust settled, Ethan returned to the palace. The queen awaited him in the great hall, her expression calm but her eyes bright with something unspoken. Kale rushed to him, hugging his arm, smiling with joy. The queen rose from her throne. "Tonight you stood with my people," the translator said softly. "You gave them strength when fear sought to break them. For that you have my respect." Her words carried weight, but so did the silence that followed. She stepped closer, her gaze locking with his. "But know this," she added firmly. "You are bound here now. My child looks to you, my people look to you, and I will not allow you to leave while danger still surrounds us." Ethan felt the weight of her words. He had saved them, yes. But in doing so, he had tied himself to their fate even more tightly. The rising threat of the Drakthar was only beginning, and he knew the queen was right. His journey here was far from over. The calm that had returned to the Veyari city after the first encounter with the Drakthar was only temporary. Ethan Cross had hoped the invaders would retreat completely, but scouts soon reported massive fleets approaching from beyond the horizon. This time, the threat was not a test. It was an attack meant to capture the heir, Kale, and take the queen's throne. The queen called an emergency council. Ethan stood beside her, the child at her side, as the advisors argued fiercely. Veyran, more determined than ever, demanded Ethan be kept from the battlefield. "He is not of our kind," Veyran insisted. "He cannot lead warriors as one of us can. But the Queen's eyes were unwavering. "He has already fought with us," she said. "He has earned trust not by birth but by courage. And now we fight as one people or we fall separately." The council fell silent. The words rang with truth. The Drakthar were coming, and no argument could protect the heir if the Veyari did not stand united. Ethan spent the night walking the walls, inspecting defenses and speaking with soldiers. He moved among them freely, pointing out weak spots, suggesting formations, and explaining simple strategies of human warfare adapted to Veyari technology. "Do not just rely on your towers," he advised, tracing lines in the sand with a glowing crystal. "Use your numbers, your speed, and the terrain. Force the enemy to fight where they are weak." Kyle watched him, eyes wide. The small heir imitated his gestures, drawing patterns of defense in the glowing sand. Ethan smiled softly. "You'll lead your people one day," he said. "Remember this even if I am gone." The soldiers laughed lightly, a rare moment of relief before the coming storm. When dawn broke, the Drakthar fleet arrived. Ships of jagged black metal blotted out parts of the sky, and their ground forces advanced with frightening speed. The city trembled under the pounding of their energy weapons. Ethan took command at the front line. Though he was not Veyari, the soldiers followed his guidance. He positioned them to defend critical points and coordinated the towers with simple but clever signaling methods. The human's way of reading battle through gestures and commands allowed him to direct hundreds of warriors at once, even though he could not speak their language fluently. The Drakthar attacked with ferocity, their weapons cutting swathes of destruction through the outskirts of the city. Yet the Veyari, led by Ethan's planning, held their positions. During the fiercest moments of the battle, a Drakthar squad slipped past the walls, heading straight for the palace. Chaos erupted as the Queen's guards rushed to intercept them. Ethan knew Kale was in danger. He ran faster than he had in years, cutting through corridors and stairways in the palace. The child's small voice called to him from the throne room. There, a squad of Drakthar had cornered Kale. The child was frightened but did not cry out, staring boldly at the invaders. Ethan leaped into the fray. Using a combination of human technique and Veyari energy blades, he disarmed the attackers and shielded Kale with his body. "Stay behind me," he shouted, even though the words were not fully understood. The tone, the movement, and the protection were clear. Together they retreated to a secret passage winding through the palace walls. The child clung to him, eyes wide but trusting. Ethan fought every step of the way, his determination unshakable. Outside, the battle raged on. Ethan's strategies had inspired the soldiers to fight with a unity they had never experienced before. They worked as one, covering each other, using the towers strategically, and setting traps for the invading forces. The Drakthar were strong, but they had underestimated the courage of the defenders. Energy beams struck the invaders from unexpected angles, and careful ambushes forced them into retreat. After hours of relentless fighting, the Drakthar withdrew, their ships lifting into the sky and disappearing into the horizon. The city had survived, though the scars of battle were evident. Buildings were damaged and streets were filled with debris, but the people had held their home. When the dust settled, Ethan returned to the palace with Kyle. The child hugged him tightly, and for a brief moment, the world outside seemed to vanish. The Queen awaited them in the throne room. Her face, calm yet intense, studied Ethan. "You have proven yourself," she said through the translator. "You saved my child. You have given my people courage when they had none. You are unlike any I have known." Ethan bowed respectfully. "I did what anyone should do," he said. "I saved a life, nothing more." The Queen shook her head. "No, what you have done is more. You have shown that one being can change the fate of many. That is no small thing." Varen, still glaring, muttered something about luck and outsiders, but no one listened. The court had already seen the truth. Ethan's courage and wisdom had held them together in their darkest hour. Kale ran to Ethan again, holding his hand. "You helped us," the child said, voice trembling but proud. The words were simple, but the meaning was clear. Kale's trust had grown into admiration, and Ethan felt a sense of warmth he had never experienced. The Queen watched silently, her expression unreadable, but her eyes softened. "Your presence cannot be denied," she finally said. "You are bound to my people now, not by force, but by the trust of my heir and the loyalty you have earned." Ethan realized the weight of her words. He had come as a visitor, a stranger. Now he was a protector, a teacher, a defender. His choices had shaped the destiny of the Veyari, and yet a shadow remained. The Drakthar were out there, regrouping. The peace they had won was temporary. Ethan looked at Kale, then at the Queen. "We will be ready," he said, quietly but firmly. "Next time they will not reach the city." The Queen nodded, her eyes reflecting both pride and caution. "Then we prepare together," she said. And so, amidst the ruins of battle, a new bond was forged. Human and Veyari united against a common threat, stronger for their shared courage. The city was alive again, though scars of the battle still marked the streets. Energy towers flickered with repair, soldiers trained in new formations, and citizens whispered of the human who had saved them all. Ethan Cross walked through the city with Kale, the child's small hand in his. The streets shimmered under the light of the repaired crystal towers, and everywhere people greeted him with respect. It was a world far from Earth, yet somehow it was beginning to feel like home. The Queen summoned him to the throne room once more. Ethan entered cautiously, unsure what to expect. He had fought, taught, and protected, but he had not yet considered what the Queen might ask of him next. She rose from her throne as he approached. Her presence filled the room, commanding and graceful. "You have proven your courage," she said. "You have earned the trust of my heir and my people. But now a choice must be made." Ethan's stomach tightened. He had thought of this moment countless times. His fleet still searched the stars for him. Should he return, or stay with the Veyari who had come to depend on him? The Queen's voice softened. "You may leave. You may return to your people if that is your will." Ethan shook his head. I do not know," he admitted. "I came here to save a life. I never imagined all of this." Kale ran forward, placing his small hands on Ethan's chest. "Stay," the child said simply, eyes pleading. Ethan knelt to meet him. The trust and admiration in those eyes spoke louder than any command. The Queen stepped closer. "He sees you as more than a protector," she said. "I see it too. You are bound to this land not by chains but by duty and honor, and I will not let you leave. Not while you are needed here." Ethan felt a mixture of relief and surprise. He had feared captivity, yet now he realized that staying was not imprisonment, it was a responsibility, an honor. He looked at the Queen. "You truly wish me to stay?" She nodded. "Yes, your wisdom, your courage, your heart, they are rare. You have changed my people and you have saved my child. Your place is here at our side." The words settled over him like sunlight. Ethan realized that humanity's strength was not just in technology or power. It was in compassion, courage, and the bonds it forged across the stars. He turned to Kale, who grinned. "Then we will face the future together," Ethan said. The Queen watched them, her face serene. "Together we will ensure peace. Together we will protect what is most precious." And so the human who had begun as a stranger became a hero among the stars, bound not by force, but by trust, courage, and the lives he had chosen to save. The Veyari had found in him a protector, a teacher, and a friend. And in return, Ethan discovered a home among the stars, a place where humanity's best qualities could shine brighter than any crystal tower. The story of Ethan Cross, the human who saved an alien child and stood beside a queen, would be told for generations, a testament to the power of courage, honor, and the unbreakable bonds of compassion.